Welcome to a secondary level Q&A. Today is Thursday, September 10th. We have several members here today that will be trying to answer some of the questions that you have. And I know that a lot of families do have questions. We'll try to provide as many answers as possible. So I'll start off with Tanya Kurt-Hord. She's the middle school principal here. Dr. Janice Laporte is the assistant principal at the middle school. Mr. Keith, our assistant principal at the high school. And I am Mike Dudek. I'm the principal of the high school. So again, welcome. Thank you for having us in your homes or wherever you're joining us today. Today is simply a Q&A. We're trying to answer as many questions as possible. And we'll, again, try to answer what we can for you. And if we can't answer those today, we'll be sure to get back to you with that. Also, just a reminder that I know today is the 10th. We are eagerly waiting for your students, whether they're remote or hybrid, on next Wednesday. We'll have them in our buildings or online platforms. And our teachers have done a tremendous job working on PD to be ready and prepared for day one. So we look forward to that. So with that, I think Jan and Dr. Laporte will be fielding some questions from home, and we'll begin. Jan, are you seeing any questions yet, or we could wait? We could eagerly wait. I thought we were going to be the big ticket for tonight.
I thought so too. But nothing yet.
Nothing yet. Okay. Well, we'll wait. Again, we're looking at this from a Zoom. We're at a Zoom link, so we're not sure who's out there. I know people are Facebook Live, so we don't know who's on board right now. But if you do have any questions, feel free. And again, we will be here till 6 o'clock. There is a school committee meeting tonight at 6, so we will have to finalize any Q&A at 6 o'clock promptly at that time.
There's a question for you, Mike.
Ooh.
Some classrooms at the high school have shared computers. Are there going to be keyboard covers with individual plug-in mice for each student so that not touching the same keyboard and mouse?
So that's a great question. I know that we do have some shared labs in our graphics and computer communications courses, and our teachers have been discussing various options. I know that working with the assistant superintendent, we are purchasing additional keyboards and mice. So again, the goal would be that individual students would have their own keyboard or mouse or anything to that extent. I think we talked about covers, but I think the keyboards in our building, they're all varied, different brands. So I don't think there was one uniform cover, but that is something that's on our table in terms of how are we looking at shared items, how do we disinfect them, or how do we give individual supplies to students? So thank you for that question. Hopefully that answered that question.
Here's another question. What time do kids not eating breakfast at school need to be dropped off at the middle school? The video only talked about those kids arriving by bus or for early breakfast.
So we actually, the coming early is not the breakfast. The breakfast starts once everyone is off of the buses. So if for drop off, if you're not going to take advantage of the healthy start, then you want to be dropping off at 7:40. That's when our buses are arriving, and the drop off is in the same area as the video. But they have from 7:40 to 7:48. And then at 7:48 is when the homeroom time starts, and so you want to be there before homeroom.
There's another question here. I'm not sure if they're talking about picking up food, but the question is there an alternate pickup day of when if we are unable to make out scheduled pickup date? This may not be for food. It may be for the orientation day, Tanya. I'm going to say that's what that means.
Yeah, so whatever students did not come and pick up on the orientation day, we'll be reaching out to those individual families to schedule a time. If you couldn't do the Monday, I'll be sending out some additional times where you'd be available to be able to come and pick up.
Will there be gym classes at the middle and high school? Will middle schoolers be expected to carry all supplies in backpacks each day they're in school in lieu of lockers? So there's two questions in one there.
Mr. Dudek, you want me to go first, since two of the questions were for me and then in general?
Sure.
So we're not using locker rooms. Locker rooms are not being used. So we're asking those students who do have gym, it will only be those who are assigned for gym for first quarter right now, to wear comfortable clothing, to have sneakers, because we will not be changing, and there will be PE. We'll be going out as much as we can outside. With the guidelines through DESE is if you're can be having PE if you're outside without masks, if you're at least 10 feet distance. We already have the gym marked out to be 10 feet apart, but there will be alternatives to what we're doing and thinking outside of the box, so that we're still providing PE and as much activity as we can. So it's not just seat work. We're actually going to try to have those physical activities, and the PE teacher has been working on that diligently for the past PD days that we've had. And the other part was lockers. No lockers or cubbies are going to be assigned. That's elementary and secondary level. So students will have to bring with them what they need, and they should only be bringing the items that they need.
Yeah, and just to kind of extend off that, I think Tanya provided a clear answer there, but I think our PE teachers and just everyone in the building is looking at our space in a different manner, from a learning standpoint. I think our PE wellness is looking at every option to be outside, looking at what activities we typically were able to do that we may not be able to do now, in terms of just sharing. I think there's going to be a lot of equipment with rackets and having individual supplies as well, so that students aren't sharing balls, and just limiting the amount of shared items. Spaces are going to be marked in its various locations, and we're going to follow the guidelines set in terms of being 10 feet across or 10 feet away. And I think Keith had a little bit in there as well.
Yeah, I know our high school staff, as far as PE wellness, they've dug into the regulations set forth, and they've done a great job as far as altering their classroom and their, like Mr. Dudek said, we're going to be outside as much as possible. A lot of the high school things early will be fitness-based, individualized, which will give us an opportunity to get outside when possible. But we, at the high school level, with different racket sports, I think the goal is to number each racket and have each student have their own racket every single time that they're responsible for. At the high school level, I will say though, the classes are probably 12 to 13, 14 kids, boys and girls combined. At the high school level, the students will have to change. At the high school level, we don't want a kid to go out and have to run 2 or 3 miles or whatever the case is of fitness and then go to the English class. So they will be allowed to use the locker room. Well, it's already been spaced out 6 feet apart. Actually, it's longer. It's more than that. It's 10 feet apart down in the locker room. There will be no lockers issued. Students will have to bring all their belongings in a backpack up, which will be then locked in the upstairs gymnasium before they go out. And then they will be allowed to go back down and change again. Just for hygiene purposes at the high school level, young adults, they're going to perspire quite heavily in different areas of their activity. So we felt that it was important for them to be able to change their clothes to be able to go to the academic classes.
Yeah, just in terms of academic wings, the lockers will be closed off. So students, unfortunately, will be having to carry items. But, at the high school level, when we talk about scheduling, we are going to be in a 4x4 block. So students are only going to be, at most having 4 classes a day as opposed to 6 or 7 So that should hopefully alleviate some of the carrying of textbooks and supplies and so forth.
We have another great question here, and it's funny because it's happening in our building right now, but could someone explain what was done to evaluate and improve the air system since every classroom isn't getting an air purifier?
I can speak because I'm in the teacher workroom right now and not in my office because they're in there cleaning all of the ventilation system in the middle school. They've been here for quite some time. And I just had to make sure in the room behind me, they were not using the vacuum 5 minutes before we just came on. So they are going through and making sure that all of the ventilation as well as the vents, the air vents, were getting as much flow of outside air. We do have Mr. Ehrenworth on here as well in case he wants to speak to that as well.
Certainly. You actually did a very nice job. You covered most of the bases. So as you mentioned, we are having all of the HVAC ductwork cleaned, and all of the air circulation settings are being set to allow for the maximum amount of fresh air to come into all of the buildings.
And at the high school level, we have, I believe, I want to say 6 interior classrooms which have no windows. Those classrooms will not be used for classrooms this year. With students, we were able to schedule and move people around within the building so that every classroom at the high school that students will be in will have windows for the staff and for the students.
That's a good point, Mr. Ducharme. That's the same thing at the middle school. So we did have some interior rooms, including counselors' offices. Everyone has been moved so that they are where there's windows, and all staff has been instructed to have those windows open so that it increases the airflow.
Next question. This particular person said that we watched the video on FMA at the middle school. The arrows seem like a good idea, but how do you expect to control live student flow, as we think it will be pandemonium with them trying to follow the arrows one at a time?
So normally if we had a full school, it could be pandemonium, but we're only expecting no more than about 148 students per day. And so students will only be moving into certain areas at certain times. So it will be much easier to have the flow. And yes, it will take us some time, and it may take a little bit more time before we get used to it. We as staff has been trying to practice our one-way areas since we've been here, so that when students come, it's more natural to us because we're used to going the completely different ways. But it will take some practice, and we'll be taking practices, and students will be guided so they know what's going on.
I think just to add, I'm sorry, Jan. So just to add, I know it was a middle school piece, but I'm sure there's high school folks there too. Everything is going to be relatively staggered when we are doing pickup or drop off. So we're going to try to minimize the flow in the hallways. To Tanya's point, we'll only have about half of our students in the building, so it'd be a lot less of that traffic flow. We do have one-way hallways, so it'll be a process, and I'm expecting that in the first couple of days. We're going to have to remind folks, but that is something that at the end of the day too, we all have to take some sort of accountability and understand that we're in this together, and that we need to practice social distancing and wear masks, but there will be, friendly reminders to make sure that is happening at all times in all of our buildings.
And at the high school, we also are going to have one-way staircases, which, like Mr. Dewey said, will take some time for the students to get a grasp on it, but they will have a lot of support in the hallways with staff.
Stay right there, because this is another high school question. Why did the high school students have to choose an 8th class?
So I think that's a good question. We typically had students that would take 7 classes. I know there's been some conversations about study halls or not having study halls, but I think that it presented itself, in this pandemic for us to do a block 4x4 and to add an additional course for students to be able to take. We feel as a collective group, that it's an opportunity for students to be able to explore something that they may not have thought about or didn't have room in their schedule. As an example, I know at school committee meeting last year when we talked about Project Lead the Way and how that would impact students that are choosing or need to take a foreign language in the PE class, but they also want marching band or wind ensemble, and having to make a choice. Students will not have to make that choice. But again, I think there's opportunities for some VHS courses. We're trying to be creative with our schedule to be able to offer, more classes for students. And if they did not choose another class, students would have a study hall. And I think what people just need to understand and we can look at this from a case-by-case standpoint, these are 80-minute blocks. So a typical study hall period, students are in there for 46 minutes. They're able to not wander, but walk around the building and get support from teachers and go into different classrooms, and go to the library. There's going to be a lot of restrictions. So we felt that, having an additional course would engage students with another teacher with content, and not having students just be in an assigned classroom working independently for that 80-minute extended block.
Thank you. This is for both the middle and high school. For those students beginning with 100% remote learning, when will those plans be released to parents? For example, will lessons be recorded or provided live 5 days per week for each class block?
So I can speak for the middle school. The middle school, the remote only were, when you were emailed, you were given, there was assigned one each. We had enough so that we had one whole class for each grade that was assigned to a team. And that teacher and those teachers on that team have a dedicated time to be doing actual instruction and lessons through their Google Classroom, and everything that we first attempted to do in those first 2 weeks when we first went remote learning in the springtime. So it will be much more like that. And as soon as all levels, elementary, middle, and high, are ready to commit so what happens is we kind of build a draft of the scheduling, and once we can all commit at once, then it will be going live. So that we're hoping will be coming on tomorrow at some point, but it will have, when you come to the orientation to do pickup, you will have your child's schedule within that information that you will receive from us.
I think just similarly to the middle school, we were able to create a cohort of students that are remote. We have assigned teachers pretty much in every content area with a few electives. And in terms of just the day-to-day, students will be following a regular school day like they would if they were in the building. Teachers will be logging in, and my assumption, pretty clear, is that teachers will be logging into Google Classroom. They'll be doing Google Hangouts, and they'll be synchronous learning. It'll be live instruction. I know we talked about sort of the screen time and, what does online learning look like? And I think online learning isn't just 6.5 hours of looking at a screen. We all know, from the spring that is just exhausting, and it just is not viable for everyone. So we are looking at strategies of how to provide direct instruction, for some point of a lesson, being able to provide some independent learning, closing the screen and doing some reflection or reading, coming back together, doing some collaborative elements through various apps, and being able to do that. I think to Tanya's point, what we did in the spring is going to be completely different. We are tasked to be taking attendance every day for students that are remote or in the building. Grades will be taken, and time on learning is going to be something that we're looking at. So it'll be a regular school day, just a little different, but we are, really considering how do we sort of minimize the screen time so that students don't feel fatigued after 2 hours of screen time. So hopefully that helps answer that question.
I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Dudek said. So at the middle school level, actually K to 12, we're rolling out a new literacy program, and we're very excited about the middle school program and what that's going to be offering. And so that actually it's completely virtual for us, but it also has a consumable workbook. So those workbooks will be there for the remote only. Actually, all students will be getting that. Our math program also has a consumable. So this way, when they're doing some work, it can be that maybe they're there in the Hangout, but they're not having to look at the screen, and they're able to use some print consumable materials to kind of reduce that screen time.
Next question is, if a student starts out remote for the first quarter, are they able to go hybrid the second quarter?
So, I can answer that. I think we are looking for folks to commit to at least a quarter to try out to see what that looks like. And I think from a case-by-case scenario, we'll look to see if for some reason that's not working, how can we switch that instructional mode? I will be honest. I think it's gonna be a process. And trying to find alignment with classes that students are doing remote to hybrid or hybrid to remote, but trying to make that work. So I would say, the commitment for families is that, we're looking at least a quarter. We have semesters at the high school now, it's new. So we'd have to really, truly look to see how that could work and to make sure that it's aligned. But to the person's question, a quarter would be good, and then we would just get a family request, and then we can work through the schedule to see what we can do to make that work.
I would be the same thing for the middle school. It would be for the quarter, and I'm sure, ahead of time we will be sending surveys out to those remote families, even hybrid, if there are families who are wanting to switch at the end of that quarter. And we will need some time frames to do that. So it will be a few weeks before the end of the quarter that we're asking for that information.
So Jan, just to kind of tie in a little quickly. So I know that we've been getting family requests even today, yesterday, about trying to move from, one cohort to the next, or going from remote to hybrid or hybrid to remote. And I just want people to sort of just appreciate the level of details that need to go in to creating a schedule based off of the numbers that we originally had. And trying to work with folks and trying to be fair and reasonable. And we have supports, for students or families that are concerned about SEL and social and emotional learning. We can do some check-ins with counselors, and I think there's some flexibility there. But we are at a level where we need to go and create schedules, and anything that is, requested for a change truly impacts everything, whether that's our bus schedule and what that looks like, to the number of students that are in a classroom, to teachers, being able to fully support students that are remote. So that's just something that I just wanted to throw out there, and just have people realize.
Okay, next question. What is the procedure if a student is going to be dismissed from an in-person day for a doctor's appointment? What about if it's a remote day? Do they let someone know that they're logging off early?
That's a good question. So for the in-person one, I have the procedures, but I didn't think about the remote. So if they are logging off early and it's a remote day, we would ask that you give the school a call and let us know, because we have not done before for the middle school take attendance every class, but we will be, in the computer, teachers have always taken attendance, in class, but in the computer, we will be noting daily who's in and who's not in. So please, even if on the remote days, if you're a hybrid student or a full remote, if someone's not going to be in, to please call the office under the normal procedures. If you call and it's not office hours, you can just leave a message, and Mrs. Levitt checks those first thing in the morning. As for if you're coming at the middle school to come pick up, we will ask when you come up to the buzzer and press, that we will ask who your child is. There's going to be a little Google form to fill out that you'll put your name, your information, your child's name, and then the reason for it, because we realized once we always would have people come and sign out, it was a shared paper, shared pen. And so while we're in the process of having your child come down from the classroom, you're able to give us those reasons virtually through a Google form. It's kind of like the surveys. And then that will be our record of why you're asking them to be picked up early.
And I think at the high school level, if it's a student that's either fully remote or home that day, a phone call would be great, but I think it would be also nice if you email your teacher, letting them know that that I won't be at today's session, at today's Google Hangout, because I have an appointment. Along with the phone call would really, I think, benefit the staff also.
I just think, like any time, medical documentation would be great for us to be able to have that, so that we understand, what is excused and what isn't. And I think we're still navigating that. I think, again, we're in COVID, pandemic, and that people are going to get sick, and we're going to be quarantining, and we're going to try to be as flexible as possible. But I think, what Mr. Boucharm and Ms. Ward just mentioned is the process, but just also thinking about, the medical notes. And I get it, I'm trying to get into a hospital, and what door do you use? And a lot of doctors don't want to see you, and they'll do it remotely. We'll have to go and look at, how do we truly, be able to get those notes or understand what are the medical situations happening with your son or daughter.
2 quick questions for the middle school. Where can they find the middle school supply list, and when will the schedules be posted in Next 2 for the middle school?
So the schedules are posted the same way as once everybody's ready to commit their schedules. When they're live, they have to be live district-wide. It has to all be done at the same time. So when high school's ready, elementary's ready, the middle school's ready, that's when it will be live in the parent portal. Really check out our middle school website. We have a lot of information on there. We started to add things in the springtime, and we will continue to do so. So there's a technology resources link at the top that has all the information and some short tutorials that Mrs. Tasker has done an awesome job to be able to walk parents through some of the different technology pieces, because we didn't have this stuff when we were in school. We also have resources that are going to continue to be put on that page that are from our counselors in order how to support your child socially, emotionally at home. And then we also have brand new that we've been working on during these PD days with the teachers is really if you're fully remote, a lot of the issues we had in the springtime was a lot of parents waited for their child to say, oh yes, I am done, or I did all of that, or they said it and it wasn't done. So the major graded assignments teachers will be posting on a teacher webpage. And so when you go there, it's not, all the teacher pages are not live, but you can see our new setup. And we called it student assignments. It's at the very beginning. And when you click on that, you go by grade, you go by the teacher. We also put the subject next to the teacher for easy access. And what you will find on there is what assignments each week the child's going to need to do, hybrid, remote, at home when they're in school. So parents have all that information. So once you have, I know for 6th grade parents, they don't have the parent login information yet. That is supposed to come out on Monday. But once you can log into that parent portal, you can look at your child's grades. You can look at the assignments. Our teachers do know what assignments are missing. And you'll be able to go down to the new teacher websites that will have that information. I missed out because I was too excited about our new teacher website page. I forgot about the supply list. So normally every year we review our supply lists and then we put those up. And I had the teachers, knowing that we were going to be hybrid this year, go back to those supply lists and reevaluate and really narrow down what the students would need. So if you go on our school website under supply lists, you will see that, as well as if you did not finish the math homework, summer work, or if you needed another copy, that is also on our school's website.
Thank you. Next question is, how are students with IEP supposed to have access to services at home? I don't know if Mrs. Piligallerani's on here or the principals want to answer that question.
I am here if you'd like me to jump in. So all special ed parents will be receiving a phone call. I think I'd mentioned this on a previous Zoom, and they'll actually be getting some phone calls from their liaisons, their students' liaisons, and they'll be talking to them about how school will look and how services will be delivered. But we do have services that would be delivered remotely, whether it's it could be a class, it could be OT, it could be PT, it could be speech. So the IEP services will continue to be delivered, but the teachers will be reaching out to you because during this time, during remote learning, services could look a little bit different. So they'll be reaching out to let you know that. And as we did in the springtime, there will be a student learning plan. It's called the COVID-19 Special Education Student Learning Plan. So those will be completed for all of our students that will outline any changes that will be taking place.
Thank you. Next question. What is the format platform being utilized for remote learning? And also, how were the cohorts assigned?
So the platform we're using is Google with Google Meets. That's what we're using for everything. We use the Google Classroom. Cohorts for middle school were assigned first we received the bus list with the cohorts, and then that dictated then how many open spots we had in each cohort. And so I'm trying to do kind of like an ALMZ, but that really didn't happen. So it was really about where we could fit the students, making sure siblings and the bus list matched.
Yeah, and that was the big issue. The big thing to do was to make sure that all the siblings were in the same cohort, whether they were in 4th grade or 12th grade. And the bus transportation guidelines we had to follow, and special education also played a little role in that. There were, obviously there's some cohorts that had to be adjusted due to that.
Next question has to do with masks. Can students wear gaiters in place of masks? And if not, are parents providing masks or is the school? And how realistic is it for students to wear a mask for 6 hours per day?
So everyone has to use masks. That is on the school committee agenda it's talking about tonight too. We have a whole COVID-19 appendix that's about 59 pages long. I did already present all of that information back on the August 16th school committee meeting, and everyone has to wear masks. There will be mask breaks throughout the day, and it's not just students, it's everyone in the building. All of the adults are wearing masks. And then the guidelines will be coming from the school committee exactly what mask. If a child does not have a mask, we will provide a mask. If one gets dirty, we will give them a mask. We are asking families, if you can, to at least bring a backup, but we will have masks to be able to give students.
But just a reminder to all you folks, students will not be allowed on a bus if they do not have a mask. So please make sure that they do have a mask for the bus. They won't just be able to come to the school and then get a mask. So there's a little preparation involved in that. Students won't be allowed to enter the building unless they have a mask. We do have extra masks, but as far as transportation goes with the bus, you will not be allowed on the bus without a mask.
At the middle school, I do have, if there's anyone who needs some cloth masks, I did have a parent donate, I believe, about 40 of them. So if you want to give me an email, we certainly can give you 2 masks. So you have one, because you want to make sure that you're washing those every day. So you'd have one to use and one backup. So just send me an email if you do need them.
I think, just to add for the mask standpoint, we have built-in breaks that will be there. I mean, we all are wearing masks, and I know it's not a fun thing to do all the time, but we're trying to be as fair and flexible with that. But I would also stress that, some folks have been emailing and they're concerned about when are masks going to be asked to be put on. Will students be congregating in the student lots? But what we're asking in general, because as soon as you get onto campus, you're putting on your mask and not walking from your class to the main building and then trying to put it on right before you get into the school. I know students that are on the bus will be wearing masks throughout the entire ride there as well. So I think it's just a best practice. As soon as you walk onto campus or get onto campus, you put that mask on and get ready for the school day.
Next question, how will the school buses work? And I think what they mean by that is, as far as keeping socially distanced between the students, if there's an issue on the bus.
Sure, I can speak to that. The students on the school buses will be socially distanced. The distance between the sides of the aisles, the sides of the school bus, is sufficient according to the DESE and CDC guidelines. So there will be no more than one student per seat. And the only exceptions to that will be if there are siblings, then they can sit with just a maximum of two to a seat. And the actual backs of the school buses provide barriers. So the backs of the seats are actually high enough so that when students are sitting properly, that will provide an additional piece of barrier. Again, students will be asked to enter the buses slowly, one at a time, so they're not violating social distancing norms. And the bus will be disinfected regularly, and the high touch point spots in the bus will be disinfected more frequently, even during the course of the day, multiple times. High frequency touch points, meaning the railings, the doors, and the windows will be open on the buses, so that will allow for fresh air circulation. With respect to issues on the bus, they will be handled as they normally are. If there are behavioral issues on the bus, then that would be reported to the school administration. If there are issues where students are refusing to wear masks, or they're not behaving in accordance with what the expectations are, then we may have to, like others, ask those students to go to a remote program. We are going to be very firm with respect to students following all of the guidelines and making sure that we have masks, because it's everybody's safety that they'll be jeopardizing if they're playing around. So.
Thank you. This is for the middle school. Will there be a middle school band? Yesterday, the elementary school said 5th grade band will be done remotely. Is the middle school band going to be remotely also?
So all band, again, that's part of the COVID-19 appendix. So all band, so all woodwind and trumpet instruments cannot be played. So if it's a rainy day, we have alternatives that will be happening during the band time, but the band teachers do plan on taking the students outside as much as possible. They will be using a different area than our physical education classes. Same thing with chorus for 7th and 8th grade. The chorus is still able to be in the schedule. However, there cannot be any singing within the building, but there will be some alternatives to what we're doing with chorus.
This may be a question for Mr. Ehrenroth. It says, just to clarify on the air, experts say older buildings need to increase airflow by 5 to 6 times or install high efficiency filters in the system for infectious diseases. How much was the airflow increased?
All of the airflow in each one of the buildings, particularly in the older buildings, we actually had the airflow set to 100%. So where these systems, it's a great question specific to the older buildings. For example, the high school, where the controls of the systems may not have been reliable at a point, we actually had an electrician go through every one of the univents, and we've actually opened all of the airflow valves and vents to 100%. That, in addition with keeping windows open and having our exhaust fans checked, which they have been, and we're making sure that those are working properly. That's part of our building inspections for us to be able to open. So the vents being opened 100%, the open windows and the exhaust fans working properly should be significantly better than it's ever been. And it should be sufficient to keep everybody healthy.
Thank you. Ms. Crick,
I'm sorry, Mr. Sternworth, just in terms of the filters too, wasn't there?
Oh, correct. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike. So there was a question regarding the filtration. I wasn't sure if that question was asking about filtration systems or the filters in the systems, so I will speak to both of those. As Mr. Dudek mentioned before, if there are rooms that are not with windows, we do have medical grade HEPA filtration systems in the building where they are needed. But with respect to the filters in the HVAC systems, where possible, all of the filters are being changed to a MERV 13 filter. That's minimum efficiency rating value of 13, which is a filter that filters out extremely small particulates, and that is helpful for keeping the air clean. There are certain spaces where the filtration on some of the units cannot accept a MERV 13 filter, and those places, the filters are being placed as high as they can for the highest rating of MERV possible, but most are able to accept a MERV 13, and that's what we'll be using.
Thank you. This is two questions almost into one, and this is for you, Mrs. Kurt. It says, is the Healthy Start happening at the middle school, and what will that look like? And can you explain what the 7:10 drop-off time is at the middle school? Is it free physical education?
No, there's no physical education inside. So normally in Healthy Start, kids are running around, playing basketball. So students will be assigned a spot to sit, and they can work and use it as extra time in the morning to be prepared for the morning. But we're not able to have indoor physical education activities like the basketball that I know many students used to play. But the doors are open at 7:10, I'm sorry. And we have enough room to have about 70 students in there. Right now, we don't normally have more than that showing up. So if there needs to be there is not any kind of survey or anything that goes out for parents to sign up. It's just something that we've had for whenever parents need it. So if you need it on Monday, but you didn't need it Wednesday, that's fine.
Thank you. This is for both the high school and middle school. Any word on fall sports?
If you don't mind, Mr. Dudek, I'll start with that. The state keeps changing. Recently, volleyball in our Central Mass has just been moved to Fall 2, which is in February. So currently at this moment, and it's obviously subject to change, it looks like we will be able to have soccer, cross country, and field hockey in the fall at this time. Obviously, there are some major changes to those sports. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Dudek, but I believe cross country has to wear a mask at all times. Field hockey is moving from 11 players to 7-on-7 with other restrictions. Soccer players are staying at 11-on-11, but they have to wear a mask unless they're 10 yards away from someone, and the referees are really going to limit contact, and congregation is more like a one-on-one, a defender versus an offender. They cannot be multiple defenders attacking an offender at the same time to limit the contact with individuals. Cheerleading, fall cheerleading and football at this time have been moved to Fall 2, which again is the end of February.
Sorry, Mr. Ducharme.
That's okay, thank you.
About also with soccer and the ball not coming in contact with the head?
Yeah, there's no heading. I believe there's no more throw-ins. So everything will be an indirect kick. You know, for example, if you know soccer a little bit, if the ball gets kicked out of bounds, usually it's a throw-in. I believe instead it's going to be an indirect kick, so that they're limiting the touching with the hands of the ball, no heading at all. And in field hockey, I know there's no corners. In that situation, there'd be 3 or 4 girls that would be in the net with the goalie as defenders. That they're limiting that, so there'll be no more corners. So they are adapting the game to keep students as safe as possible, but still give them the opportunity to participate.
And I'll just add, so a plug in for school committee tonight. I'm doing a quick presentation on fall athletics, on what we know right now. I mean, updates are every day, and I think you have committees, you know, whether it's through the MIAA or Central Mass, that are trying to keep, you know, athletics and particularly fall alive for students. but I'll be updating a little bit more. So, another quick thing is I know there's a big question about levels. Are we offering middle school, JV, and varsity? So that I'll bring that up a little bit tonight. I was right before this call, I was going through emails to figure out neighboring districts in terms of what they're committing to in terms of sports and levels. So that'll be something to bring up. And then the other piece is just what we think about league play with the Dual Valley. We're still part of the Dual Valley, but what they're looking to do is like geographic pods to keep it safer. So like schools, I believe like Sutton and Nipmuc, we may not be playing because they're not part of the geographic pod, but we'll be picking up schools like Uxbridge and Oxford, but it'll be very limited. So I think there's 6 in our pod or 7. So that would mean, a typical 20 or 18 game season for field hockey or soccer may be cut down to 12. So, but I'll get into that a little bit more.
Thank you. This question is for Mrs. Kurt. Who do we contact at the middle school to exchange a Chromebook that is having tech issues? And should we do this before the start of school?
Yeah, so throughout the summer, we've been working with that. So you can just send me an email and I will have the right person give a contact to you. It would be great if every student, if you did not turn your Chromebook on this summer, to turn it on, make sure it's fully charged for the first day, make sure you're coming fully charged, and then make sure there isn't any issues because we do have a limited number of Chromebooks to be able to swap out. We certainly cannot have 100 of them all coming in at once. So if you can do that, we can make sure to have one ready for you to go on the first day.
And I think that's a good point, Tanya, that you made to all students, and staff. I think we need to make sure that we treat our Chromebook like our cell phone. I know having teenagers myself, their cell phone's always charged at night. So my recommendation to all your students would be when you plug in your cell phone at night, plug in your Chromebook at night right next to your cell phone so that both are charged and ready to go for the next day because, unfortunately, we just don't have the ability to charge 12 or 14, 15 Chromebooks in one of the classrooms during the day. So it's important, it's your responsibility. I know teenagers have their cell phone charged, so please make sure that you do the same with your Chromebooks.
It also will help us to limit the number, swapping out Chromebooks and students having to disinfect and touch more than one Chromebook. So if you're coming, yours is charged, then you're good for the whole day. You won't have to recharge it. But if there is an issue, we'll swap out a new one, get that one fixed as soon as as fast as we can.
There's a few questions that keep asking about when will scheduling come out. And, what was answered earlier was, during orientation, they can pick them up with their folders. Login information for parents should be in there, as well as any other information. Is there anything else that the high school or middle school want to add to that?
So the parent portal information for login, that will be an email those should be receiving. It will not be in the folder, but everything would be in that folder. They will be able to see the schedule that's in X2, but in the middle school, we're actually having kind of 2 schedules so that teachers are not having to teach on the screen while the students are also in front of them. So when the child is at home, there will be an at-home schedule with times and everything, just our normal school day. But they actually have a schedule that will be in school. That's what's live on X2, and they have the at-home schedule. That will be in every student's folder, personalized for every single student with a label on it. And it's something for you to please keep that at home in a spot wherever your child's going to be doing remote learning for the day so that they can follow through with that schedule.
Just to add from high school, so we're committed as a district to have our schedules live tomorrow. So that should be on Aspen X2. But in terms of other dates at the high school level, we have orientation for our freshmen on the 14th, and I know there's some questions about, well, are parents invited to that? And I think we're trying to minimize our groups, so our parents will not be a part of that. I will be sharing out some virtual sessions or videos to help you understand the building a little bit further. So there's a cohort 1 at 9 to 10:30, cohort 2 is from 10:30 to 12. We also have some virtual sessions set up for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade on the same day. It was in the email that I sent, but if anyone needs that, again, just let me know. But we're starting that at 1 to 2:30 to 30-minute blocks for each session. And then we also have a quote campus visit or open campus with 30-minute slots for each grade level on the 15th for anybody to come on not in, but we'll be outside with guidance to set up schedule questions. If you want a physical schedule, you can do that. It's also an opportunity to be able to pick up any sort of items if you are remote. But we also know, it's a 30-minute slot. It's not giving a lot of folks time or probably notice. So we will, cater to parents and students. But those are some sessions that we have for Monday and Tuesday of next week.
So at the middle school, we also have the same thing. I did include that in the information that went out. I know there was some confusion because we used for the buses and the cohorts gold and purple, and that is what we also use for the team. I believe most people have emailed me, and I've helped make sure everyone knows exactly. If you're still unsure, it's fine. Send me an email. I don't mind. So on Monday, it will be for our incoming 6th graders. We're asking for last names A to L from 8 to 9:15. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be here for the hour and 15 minutes. It just means that's the time frame that we have, and we're hoping people will come sporadically so we can continue to maintain the 6 feet distance. You'll be able to see the teachers, put a face to some of the names, pick up all of your items, and it will be all outside. So we're making sure to have a safe environment for everyone. So again, 6th grade is A to L, 8 to 9:15. Last name M to Z is 9:30 to 10:45. For 7th grade, if you are 7th grade gold, it will be A to L, will be 8 to 9:15, and M to Z will be from 9:30 to 10:45. If you are 7 purple, all 7 purple students will be coming from 8 o'clock to 9:15. If you're in the 8th grade, 8 gold will be on Tuesday. 7th grade is also on Tuesday. It will be A to L if you're 8 gold from 11:30 to 12:45, and M to Z, last name M to Z, from 1 to 2:15. If you're 8th grade purple team, you will be on Tuesday as well, and it will all be all students, and that's be from 11:30 to 12:45. That was a lot to take in. So if you don't remember, you couldn't find a particular email, again, you can just send me an email and I can get that information out to you.
Okay, next quick question. This is for the high school. With rooms that have no windows, for example, Mr. McCormick, will his classroom or any others be moved relatively close to where they were?
So as mentioned earlier, we were able to schedule every staff member in a room that has windows. In almost all cases, they're in the same wing or right next to where they were. I would say with the exception of wellness, Mr. Uglo and Mrs. Duchamp will be sharing a room since they're only in it once every cycle. So they'll be in room B215. We do have some teachers that are remote that will not be in their classrooms that have other areas in the building. Mr. Duran actually moved to C213, which is just down the science hallway. So most classes that were moved are definitely in the same wing or in the vicinity of their old classroom.
Thank you. Next question. I presume the school is asking students not to come to school if they're feeling ill. With that in mind, will the attendance policy be more flexible?
So I believe at these, I think on the 16th, there was also a discussion about the attendance policy. All students, we're asking all families with the COVID checklist to be checking your child for any of those symptoms. And if they are needing to stay home, but you still do need to notify us because if you're feeling one of the symptoms on the COVID list, that is also what our COVID nurse that we have right now, Mrs. Young, she's would also be reaching out so we can make sure if there's another diagnosis, there's a very long process for that. So we are asking every families every day to be using that student checklist. And if you do have any of those symptoms, you need to keep them home and notify the school. And we will continue with the rest of that process, which is all outlined in the COVID-19 appendix.
because as a district, we're going to have to be flexible with a lot of things.
Right. Okay, now the question, will there be guidance regarding the minimum amount of live instruction that teachers will be expected to provide to the remote students? And have the related technology platforms been vetted and tested?
So I believe that was a question we had earlier, that we're all using the Google Classroom and Google products. That is what the district provides for us and pays. We're not going to be using Zoom. That was something that, there was a lot of things that came out free in the spring. The companies are not offering those right now. So we're going to stick to the products that we've been using. And like I said, for the middle school, for full remote, there is dedicated time. And there's a full scheduled day, and the teachers have that period. They do not have students in front of them. They're to be instructing those remote only students. Or if you're a hybrid at home, again, you have a full scheduled day. You'll be following that schedule, and you will be having live instruction. The teacher does not have live students in front of them. They're given that time to instruct those students virtually.
I think we have time just for maybe one more question. It has, again, to do with mask breaks. They want to know how frequently and how long the mask breaks will be.
So at the high school, our school day starts at 7:35, and we have created a schedule, depending on what part of the building you're at, that we're gonna alter the mask breaks so that we don't have 160 students trying to take a mask break at once. So I would say, just off the top of my head, thinking about the schedule, that every student would get a mask break at least every hour and 15 minutes. So we have 4 blocks, block A, B, C, and D. So block A, during block A, there is a mask break that's 12 minutes long for every student and staff. Same thing with B.
I think Mr. Duchamp, you just froze for a minute. We didn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So period A, there's a 12-minute mask break involved. Period B, there's a 12-minute mask break involved. During period C, which is the lunchtime, students have a half an hour lunch, which they'll be allowed, obviously, to take the mask off while they eat. And then at the end of the day, as we stagger our dismissal, it'll also be included. So they're getting 4 mask breaks throughout the day. Obviously, the lunchtime being the half an hour or the longest mask break.
All right. So
for the mask breaks for the middle school, we're still settling those out. It's all depending on the student schedules, and we've been working diligently to finish all of those schedules. But again, just like Mr. Ducharme had said, there'll be various mask breaks, at least 3 to 4, including that lunchtime when they're eating.
So I think, Jan, I just want to thank you for facilitating the meeting. It is 6 o'clock. Sorry, we would love to be able to chat more. I know Jan mentioned that we have several questions in there. Maybe we could copy and paste those and get back to folks and so forth. So we'll try to find if there's a trend or a pattern that we can answer and respond to people. Feel free to email, but I'm hoping that you found this helpful. Again, we're trying to find all the answers to all the questions. We're working hard to get prepared and be ready for your son or daughter or your child. We appreciate the patience, and again, thanks for having us in your homes, and we'll connect soon. So thanks again.
Stay safe, everyone.
Have a good night.
You too.